Interesting. Hearing anything? We may be experiencing some technical difficulties, so please bear with us. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay. My name is Walt, and I've had the pleasure of emceeing for Will here today, who's going to be talking us about design decisions backed by user insights for B2B. Oh, wow, there's a bit of a delay. My meeting. So for the audience in person, we're just going to do a little bit of housekeeping. In the event of a fire or natural disaster, earthquake, anything nasty, remain calm, and the emergency exits are right in front of you with the little green light. The toilets for the men are straight ahead, and if you walk down towards the end and towards the right, female toilets are there. The event will be photographed and recorded online, so please yell out if anything. And we're just going to be covering a little bit about Will, Actionstep, and we'll do a little bit of a Q&A after his prezo, so please stand by. So again, I'd like to introduce Will, and
Hey everyone, so I'm Will, Head of Design here at Actionstep. Corridor is actually our office. So I guess I've been working in B2B software basically most of my career. It is what I know and love. But there are, I guess if anyone else, actually just for people in the room, is anyone else in B2B? Nice, a few. I guess one of my experiences has been a lot of what we read and a lot of the great stuff that's out there, I often found is not super applicable to stuff I'm working on. So I guess what I was trying to get across in this presentation is some of the things that I've found helpful when navigating, like trying to do design research in this kind of B2B space. And stuff that has worked for me, and some of the things I've experienced. So hopefully it's somewhat helpful, and the kind of playbook we talk about at the end might be applicable in some shape or form. I think it's also applicable for everyone else, majority of the room who are in the consumer space as well, and it'll be interesting to compare and contrast afterwards. Cool. So a little bit. It's my first time using Figma slides, so it seems great so far. By the way, love it. So Actionstep, we are a legal software company. So we basically specialize in making software for mid-sized law firms. Good. We might have some technical challenges, sorry guys. But I'll keep going anyway. So we make software for mid-sized law firms. So that's basically your big or boutique law firms around the world. We've got 240 staff around the world, and a development center here just down the corridor. And here's some examples of the sort of things we're working on. Our software does basically everything that is needed to operate a law firm. So, for example, this is sounding really promising. People in the room might be hearing stuff though. Everything from intaking new clients, engaging clients, legal document management, accounting, billing, very important in legal, analytics, all that kind of stuff. Everything they need to basically run their law firm is what we are working on.
Please hold, Will. Apparently, it's not coming through in the live stream, so.
Oh, okay.
We'll
pause for a second.
Quickly resolve this.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Oh, like the screen specifically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's displaying a blank page with the audience, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
So let's see if we
As long
can...
as it's just not my face or something.
You're right. Let's see if we can resolve this really quickly. So what if we change display settings to not mirror? And if we exit this, this is a good test of Figma slides.
So this is like
It's not liking
notes
the,
mode.
it's not liking the mirroring whatsoever. How do we stop the presso?
I think we just close that one,
Okay, let's give it a try.
and then you
Just
can
present.
start again.
And see if that works.
That work?
Shall we try? Apparently not. Oh, we're back. All right.
Have I been on video the whole time? Because I've just been
Yeah,
kind
we're
of
video
staring
the
at.
entire time.
I've been staring at nothing, so that's good.
I mean, technology issues
Okay.
happen to the best of us.
Well, we're going noteless, so I do apologise. Okay, what was I? That's me. That's Actionstep. Okay, yeah, so we basically, as I was saying, build software for operating all facets of a law firm. We've got like amazing law firm customers all around the world. And yeah, we get to work on lots of cool stuff for them. And also it's not just lawyers, it's the people who are assisting those lawyers, it's the IT staff managing the firm, it's the partners, all the management, and everyone in between. There's a lot of people involved in billing, the accounting, so it's a really complex and interesting area. But that's Actionstep. Talking about, in general terms, enterprise software or B2B software. I'll use those terms interchangeably, as you'll see with this title. They're not necessarily interchangeable, but hey, that's what I did. So I guess we all know how important. I'm not going to sort of talk too much about how important user research is. I think we can all agree it's very important in crafting great product experiences. But I guess, why does it feel so hard in a B2B context? There's some nice looking software up there. One of them is an old Actionstep screenshot, by the way, really old. It can be quite hard to make really great software that is backed by user insights. And I think there's some really key reasons why that is. And it comes back to, I guess, the main dynamics of how software is purchased. In B2C, or business to consumer, we're building software that we are selling directly to the person who's going to use it. So, for example, Spotify or Instagram or Netflix. In B2B, or business to business, our business is making software that another business buys and then other people in that business use. So the users are actually within that business. So for example, we've got the big three here: Actionstep, Slack, and Watchful. Okay, and yeah, I guess that's fundamentally the buyer. The person buying the software is very often not the person who's going to be using it. I'll just shout out to Emily for designing all these slides. So I'm just seeing some of the cool things for the first time, which is nice. So yeah, the person buying is not that same person, which does have a kind of inadvertent thing that happens. And that phenomenon is basically companies over-index on making it really compelling to that person who's buying, sometimes at the expense, resources will be used at the expense of understanding what that user really wants to be using. Because it's, we want to sell software, we want to grow. So it's kind of a thing that just happens. I guess another dynamic is definitely this misconception around box ticking. Quite literally, in an RFP, or where people have a whole list of features they need to tick off to basically meet what they've got budget to buy, and they're trying to get the most features for their money. So sometimes there might inadvertently be more of an emphasis on ticking a box than actually how good is that feature. So that can also happen as well. And it can actually be really hard to talk to end users. So the people that we actually want to research, they're specialists. They're people doing maybe real niche roles, really specific things. In consumer, quite often it might be the case you can go into a cafe. You know, it's a really common thing in sort of really lean software things. Just go to a cafe and talk to people. It's quite hard to do when you need to talk to like maybe someone who's running a law firm or is, you know, working in a hospital emergency department or whatever it is. And it's quite hard to find those people quite often. So basically in summary, it's actually really easy to not do research and that often, and just get on to designing things and developing things and shipping things. And yeah, I think that's the default. But there are ways to counter, I guess, some of the most common barriers or things I've certainly navigated in my career and have seen other people navigate as well. So I'll just go through a couple of those right now. Common barriers to user research. And these are not, I would just say a lot of these are not necessarily exclusive to B2B. It's just, again, this is where most of my experiences and why, for the dynamics I've just talked about, why these things tend to manifest probably more so in B2B. But I've also experienced them in consumer land as well, so there is that. But yeah, so a common thing is, well, you've only spoken to a few users. That's which is true. We haven't spoken to all of our users where we do interviews and things like that. That's quite accurate. But I guess that's, how we counter that is we're talking about qualitative research methods, and that's really about understanding the how and the why of something. So that's, I think this Marty Kagan quote is so nice, which is, it's not statistically significant, but it is profound. And so that's finding something, observing something, someone doing something. No amount of data is necessarily going to lead you to make that discovery that you've observed, or that someone, you've pulled on a thread with something they've said. Of course, you can go measure it later. And that's actually where how you can really sort of counter this is using analytics as well. If you see something, work out how can you measure this. For example, user analytics. That's a really good way of then going and quantifying, actually, this problem impacts a lot of people, or we can see how many people, are using this particular part of the product, or trying to find this particular button, all those kind of things. And that's how, I guess, that profound insight can be quantified and really, excite people who are really numbers driven. But yeah, fundamentally, this kind of misconception stems from just a misunderstanding of different research methods. So I guess that's probably the key thing, is getting into qualitative and quantitative methods and why we would use both at different times. Another one is we already know what our customers want, and this is a classic in B2B, because I guess we tend to have really savvy buyers, people who understand what they want, and they understand what other products do, and they understand what is out there and where the industry is going. And so they ask for these things, and they ask for specific features, or they ask for specific features to change. And that is, I guess, the problem with that is often it's very easy just to then go and design and build exactly those things we've been asked to do. That's not how we exceed their expectations. At best, we can meet their expectations. But actually, I love this, again, the Steve Jobs quote, it's actually our job to figure out what they want before they want it. And if we're just kind of going through the surface level thing that they're asking for and really going with that, we're really missing the opportunity to understand the underlying need. And maybe there's some really profound thing we can do at a higher level, or something completely different that, it's actually it's not our customers' job to understand what is possible with technology and with great design. And that's, that's also why this is another reason why enterprise kind of software tends to be maybe less usable, because it's often actually grounded in the software that's come before it. That's what customers know, and that's what they ask for. They say, well, the software I used before, we used to work this way. And so it's very easy to say, well, okay, well, let's try to make it work that way. And so you're actually always kind of looking at really old references and things if you go down that route. So again, that's another sort of way to counter that. It's also like why enterprise software has this, B2B software tends to have a lot of what we call feature bloat, a lot of, it's actually a real, Simon, interesting. But try to do everything for everyone all the time. Because you're getting requests all the time, again, from new customers or existing customers. And if we just keep mindlessly building these things, we're just building that Swiss Army knife, which, to be fair, does look pretty cool. I would buy that. So, but yeah, I guess the disclaimer there is that actually the ideas and the things that customers ask for are often awesome and great ideas and things we should totally do. But I also think they're amazing for kicking off research. So if someone is asking for feature A, it's a really good chance to engage with that customer and try to understand more about why do they want that, and use that as an opportunity to go and visit their customer or to talk to some of their users to really understand it, and then work out maybe these other people that are similar, maybe they have a similar need, and approaching it that way. So it's a good way to a lot of our really good research we do at Actionstep starts with customers wanting something and us trying to understand, so this is the problem you're having, sort of reframing these requests for features as problems to solve. Cool. Let's have a focus group or a customer panel instead of doing research. This is another. I don't know if everyone else has experienced this, but the problem, the fundamental problem here is in the problems that come out in groups. As anyone who sort of done group assignments at university or any kind of group meeting, you get basically groupthink, which is where people. There'll generally be a few really loud people who dominate, and everyone tends to just fall in line with that because usually they can't be bothered trying to speak over them, or they may be embarrassed to share or be wrong or be seen as pushing something else, particularly if maybe their manager's in the room. Coming back to the B2B thing, the buyer and the user, it's kind of a bit awkward if your boss is saying what the software needs to do, and you're thinking, I don't do that. And that is really common as well. There's the idealized view of work, and then there's the actual reality of it. I guess as Erica Hall said, she writes this awesome book, Just Enough Research. She says, just say no. Which, I think there is, don't get me wrong, great value in customer advisory groups, particularly from a strategic standpoint, and understanding our buyers and kind of where the industry is going and the big picture things, and just, for things like AI, for example, generally the applicability of these things or people's perception of them, really great for that, and understanding what are these people looking for to buy in the future, but not great for users, I don't think. But again, maybe other people have different opinions we could discuss afterwards. And let's just A/B test it instead. This wasn't that common, to be honest, but it is something where you do, again, coming back to in B2B, you hear so much amazing stuff that folks like Netflix, I'm sure people in this room have done things, do a lot of cool A/B tests, and you'll hear about how at any one time, people using Uber are experiencing all sorts of different A/B tests. It's never exactly maybe what another person is experiencing because they're running these constant experiments to optimize every flow. Well, it's actually really hard to do that at B2B because customers freaking hate things changing. It is hard enough to ship features and get things out. You're going to annoy people regardless, let alone changing things between two people sitting next to each other at their desks, or the poor IT department in these companies trying to understand why this person can't do their job because they happen to be in an experiment group and getting some variant. It's just not really something we could do. Not to mention there's many kind of safety first applications where it's just not. It's just you can't safely have like one person seeing one kind of lab result and another doctor seeing another, and which one was better. That's a bit that's not going to work. So there's all sorts of reasons why it just does not really translate well to the B2B. I keep going to say Airbnb, so if I do say that, I mean B2B. Holiday in my mind. So that's another one. That does come up every now and again, and that's because that is a way that certain companies get away from having to kind of do research all the time, because let's just build it and ship it and see if it actually does translate into results, and then we can go from there. It's not something we can do as well. And the users will get training, the mythical training that's going to happen at some point. And training does happen, it's never enough. But actually, increasingly, again, I talk about these savvy buyers, they actually will literally call out things like human-centered design approaches as a way to reduce their actual costs and their operating costs and their training burden and increase the efficiency of their staff by it being easier to use. Because even if there is a training, and there will be training when they buy software like Actionstep, what if you start the week afterwards, or in 6 months' time when everyone's forgotten the training or whatever? It's never actually going to translate to being a kind of alternative to intuitive good design. But again, that is a common kind of barrier. So yeah, with all that said and done, I'm sure there's other things people in this room and then on the call have experienced. We can talk about that afterwards. But based on these things and kind of based on what we're doing here at Actionstep, I just want to talk a little bit about kind of a lightweight user research playbook and some things. We all good with the?
Oh.
We've gone offline.
We good.
We're good. Okay.
So
Should I speed up my voice or? No. Cool. It's always concerning when you see everyone upset with the computer. As I apologise for the lowercase b2b all of a sudden. So this a lightweight focused user research process is really key. And there's nothing that kind of turns off stakeholders within a B2B company than really long-winded academic perfectionist type ways to talk about user research. Because they're really results driven. They want software to get shipped, really good software, but they do want it to get shipped. So anything that kind of seems like a huge amount of work and is counterintuitive to delivering that is, it's not really going to fly, and that's a good way to not be able to get any research done. Keeping it laser focused on shipping a great product and showing what that research actually means, what is the implications for what we're learning on what we're designing is pretty key. And so this is pretty much the extent of what we do, for example, at Actionstep. So it's a pretty small toolkit of things, and doing it at different points in the process. So, for example, the more holistic end of the scale, contextual inquiry. That's probably my all-time favorite, by the way. But we actually go to a law firm or go to a hospital, whatever it is, and just hang out. Not being weird, but just hang out and watch what people are doing, and be able to talk to people. Do contextual interview is another way to describe it. Actually, I think that's a really academic sounding term, so I tend to, whenever I talk about it to business people, I just call it a site visit. But yeah, that's my favorite. But today I'm actually going to talk a bit more about user interviews. And when I say user interviews, we will always do things like, do some lightweight concept testing or user testing as part of an interview, because, again, it's actually really hard to talk to users. And if we're thinking about, I don't know if anyone's had to hire a lawyer, they tend to charge a lot per the hour. So they're quite hard people to talk to, and asking for an hour of their time is a little bit tricky. So we try to do, 25-minute things, and by the end of it, almost always they're so excited about what we're talking about, it will go longer, and suddenly there's an hour. But asking for a small amount of time is a great way to try to get to people, particularly really specialist people who, their time is quite hard to get a hold of. But again, I didn't really talk about that at the start. Well, it was actually in my notes, but I missed it. I don't have notes anymore. But talking to end users is really hard, because often they are specialist people, specialist doctors or specialist lawyers or specialist IT professionals, and they're really expensive and sought after. I guess just underpinning a lot of how I think about it, and this is a great counter as well to a lot of the things I talked about, which is talking about tacit knowledge and the idea that there are things we will never ever get told. Maybe we will, but it will never ring as loud as someone asking for feature X, as someone saying, hey, I'm really frustrated every time I have to go and click into the search field and spend 3 seconds moving my mouse to this other button, because they've been able to adapt, and they don't even think they're doing it anymore. So unless you're observing them using the system or having them talk about how they actually do something, they won't lead with that. It's a good counter to what I was talking about before about customers asking for things, or us just asking customers what they want, because that often the real huge opportunities to delight users and really make a difference, particularly with their usability of the system, it's going to come from things that they don't talk about because it's not interesting. They've moved on. They've got workarounds. They're not even thinking when they do these things. That's actually some of the most like amazing insights, is seeing that stuff and not talk about it. So that's I guess a lot of how I think about qualitative research. And then you quantify it. Well, how many times do people click that thing, and if that person's worried about 3 seconds, well, then you can actually turn that into a dollar value pretty quickly. So a key thing is keeping it lean, because as I said, a really protracted, huge study, and which, don't get me wrong, I love that stuff, love like the whole field of user research, but it's a good way for people to be a little bit disillusioned with, oh no, we're just going to go over 6 weeks and come back with a report that I'm not going to read, and we're trying to sort of move away from that and make it really lightweight and really applicable and really laser focused. So doing things like finding people by intercepting them, not out on the street, but intercepting them within the product at opportune times. Maybe they've just submitted a document and we want to understand more about that process. That might be a good time to find people who actually are really passionate about their feature. They at least use it because we can be event driven, and using tools like Pendo or Intercom or something like that to actually find people in app is pretty cool. And then using things like automations like Calendly to actually expose a schedule, so they can just go and book a session with you, and then sooner, without even doing much effort, you've got 6 interviews planned. So it's things like that that can be real game changers. Because there is nothing worse than having 7 people who want to do research and you're trying to schedule them back and forth. I've done that a lot. And they all want to book at the same time. It's really fun. But then you just do a panel. No, chicken. I'm also going to talk a little bit about some tips for interviews. But yeah, that's the kind of principles behind this. Now this is like probably... By the way, I'll just do a shout out for IBM Enterprise Design Thinking. Again, coming back to enterprise and B2B. This is a course, and it's free, I think. But this is really cool, particularly if you want to share it with non-designers for how to participate in these kind of things. It's a really nice framework and nice, easy to adapt. But this particular exercise is assumptions and questions. And for me, this is how you go from, as a team, particularly a lot of what I'm talking about is imagining a team, with some engineers and product people and a designer. How you go from, we're going to do this thing, we've got an initiative that we're going to do, to doing some research. And I think this is actually a really good exercise for that, which is, what are all the things we think we know? And if we were wrong about those, how catastrophic would it be to our success or what we think we're going to do? Also, what are all the questions we have that we actually don't know how to answer? We can't answer internally, or we need to validate with people. And so this is a really good matrix for that kind of thing. And finding out, particularly in that top right quadrant of, here are things that are really high risk and we're really uncertain about. Well, then that's actually brilliant. That's your discovery plan, is to try to address these things. And is that through interviewing? Can we look at data for these kind of things? Is there some other kind of method we can use to go and understand this? But this is fundamentally the basis for our discovery plan, is that top right quadrant. Probably a whole lot of other things, but it's a really nice team exercise as well that you can do in FigJam. I'm sure of it. I haven't done it yet, but how many times do I have to mention Figma features? Hate Miro, don't use Miro. This example actually from Emily, some recent work we're doing in the document management space. But this guy Steve Portugal, this book, Interviewing Users. Oh gosh, I think it's what I was meant to go back and double check. I've got it, but it's a really good book. But it's a great quote, which is, actually stories are where the richest insights lie, and your objective is to get people to be. I should actually read the quote. Is to get to this point in every interview, having people talking, having them talking as much as possible. Their time is really valuable. Your time's free for you. But, getting them, maximizing them talking and telling stories, not, and so that's really getting them to reflect on certain things. The last time they did something, why did they do this? Can you talk me through your process of doing this from starting from here? Really sounding like, I guess, someone who doesn't know anything is good as well. That beginner's mindset is quite helpful. and awkward is okay. And I think this is like probably the hardest thing. I struggle with this. I hate being awkward. Fail often at this, but yeah, being awkward is okay because it's really human and normal, and you're almost fighting the urge to try to finish sentences when people don't know what to say, because it's kind of awkward to watch, and fill silences when no one is talking, and to help people navigate things, particularly like really bad in user studies, if they don't know what to click, and then you tell, someone on the call tells them what to click, it's like, trying to actually work out what they don't understand. But I think that's really, and is probably the most common thing. Can just really good way to get people to talk more, and that's the key, telling those stories, and then you can ask why, and without hopefully feeling too silly. But awkward is okay. And I guess this is like I don't know if this is a hot take, but you do need to be taking notes. And taking notes in the moment. And I think this is particularly true if there's a really amazing quote or really important thing, you've got to be noting this down, because even with your amazing AI assistant, how's it going to know that was the most interesting thing that you thought of with all your product sense and all of your understanding of like the nuances of the product and the customer and how, their context. I don't believe any AI is going to understand that, and so it's really important that you're taking these down. Even your assistant, if someone else is on the call too, but increasingly it's maybe less needed with the AI note takers. But it's very good to have other people being able to see the interview as well. By the way, product people or engineers, usually a product person, might even be leading the interviews. I guess that's another. Trend is product managers are getting really into this stuff, which traditionally I would have said was more of a design domain. But yeah, using you could always basically I write really bad or into Notion really bad kind of verbatim things that I'm hearing, and then go and use transcripts to go and find when they said about this and get the full quote out of the transcript. But at least I've got the thing to remember that, so I want to go get that hunt out that exact quote, or this thing was really interesting at this particular time. Maybe even like noting down the time that something happened is another good strategy too, so you can go back to the transcript. But yeah, once you get that wall of text or that AI summary which doesn't mention anything that you remembered was interesting, that's when you really like, wish I, you can trawl through the recording to find that thing, which is okay as well. Do that as well. And so this kind of another thing is around having a discovery repository or a research repo, as we call it at Actionstep. But I think this is really key as well, particularly, at Actionstep, we have a lot of squads, a lot of people doing things all the time. And the more we talk about discovery and research, the more designers we have, the more of these things that are actually happening all the time. And there's sort of practical problems. If you go contact someone who's actually already got an interview scheduled next week with another squad, that's a little bit awkward. So you kind of don't want to be harassing the same people over and over again, and it's good to get to diversify as well. So it's very good for that, understanding who we're all talking to. The other thing that's really good is centralizing and democratizing insight. So anyone in the company can go and see what has been said in these interviews. It's connected to ChatGPT, so we can go and understand, has there been any kind of findings regarding this kind of particular search, this kind of search that people are doing, or whatever it is, this aspect of document management, because that could all come up in an interview that has nothing to do with that topic. So it's really, and that's actually really good use of AI, is to go and trawl across all of the different transcripts and interview notes that have been written to find things that you're interested in, to see, is there actually, some research insight from the past that I could draw upon and understand more about. So that's kind of what we're trying to get at with this research repo. And Notion's a really good tool for this, actually. Dovetail is, I guess, the best in class, which is pretty cool, pretty expensive, actually. And Airtable is also, a lot of people use Airtable. And another term for this is like atomic research. The idea is, you pull out atomic insights, which maybe are useful across time, not just in the moment. So would definitely encourage that, particularly if you're trying to, if more and more people in the company are doing research. But even just for yourself. I run this, but even before this, I was running one of these just for my own research. And I guess AI as a research assistant. This is quite an interesting one, because I have definitely noticed in I just realised I'm not on full screen mode. Does that matter? I don't think so. I don't. There's this kind of tendency to be like, cool, we've got AI now. I actually don't need to do anything. And it's true to some extent for certain things, but I do think of it as a research assistant and not a research lead. There we go. They flow. So the AI tools are amazing at taking notes. As I mentioned, AI note-taking capabilities are incredible, actually, and organizing and searching and trawling through things, and also finding things like blind spots that you hadn't thought about, and making connections that you hadn't necessarily thought about. But it also has no idea about so much of the nuance and so much of the things that we should have as in terms of product sense and the context of which the product's been used. Our job, as designers, is to understand and interpret what we're hearing and what we're seeing from people. It's got it twice. That's how important it is. For emphasis, it's not ChatGPT's job. I'm not meant to pick on ChatGPT. I use it all the time. But yeah, that's and this amazing AI product manager or director of AI at Actionstep, Franco Primavasi, and he has this quote which I think is so applicable. The moment we try to outsource understanding instead of augmenting it, we've missed the point. So it's not AI's job to understand what our users have told us in these interviews. It's our job. AI can help us to find other things and to find things that back up what we've taken from these interviews. But it's definitely not. You don't say, hey, what did these people tell us? What should we do? And I think there's a tendency to think that is possible. But yes, when it comes to prompting, and again, like Franco is very a great person to follow on LinkedIn, I think. But there's some really nice ways and things that he preaches in terms of how to use these tools, around being kind of persona driven and using a role, using that kind of strategy. But this is kind of how we would typically do. This is what you're doing. We need to analyze this research. Can you then go and organize it in this exact format, which we'll then copy paste back into our research repository? But the key thing is we've got to read that and understand it and delete the things that doesn't make sense. Ask it to clarify things, go and understand why has it come up with that, what is the raw kind of finding that it's going off to look at that insight, and augmenting it with those notes that we are taking ourselves in the interviews, because that's what is really interesting is when it's got a whole lot of stuff to back up the sort of things that you have taken as your kind of key takeaway from the interviews, and then using the AI assistant to help find, is this something that we're seeing across other interviews, for example. So I think that's a great way to use it. And just things that maybe it's like, you know what, I did not notice that was a thing, but two people have said the same thing. But usually that is your exact job, is to find those kind of things as you're talking to people. AI just helps to do the work of bringing that together. So that's some stuff there. I guess the research playback, and this is not Miro, this is FigJam, it's actually Miro, but you could totally use FigJam for this, and should use FigJam for this. But yeah, research playbacks. So making I think a really key thing is, I guess research has had a bad rep for being really boring, which is unfair, but it has happened because you kind of get these big long reports and it seems very academic and not meaningful. So to be really visual, connect it to certain things, make it really clear what we're talking about, and kind of getting into, so with that, based on this, what we've learnt, this is what we think we should do next, or this is how it might impact the design or what we do, in this feature we're building. So clearly articulating kind of implication of the finding, because again, that's the stuff that people tend to be excited about, particularly business-minded folks. Is what do we do with that, and how is that going to help us make an even better product? So yeah, that's the research playbacks really, and using something like FigJam actually does democratize it a lot. It becomes something asynchronous. People can add notes after the fact, or in a different time zone, which is really important for us. For example, in Actionstep, as well as it just seems kind of fun. People can add all sorts of silly things in there, which is cool. Can kind of move away from it being a real formal, boring thing. I do love the formal, boring ones as well, but yeah, I think not everyone does. And that is all of my slides. I guess I had quite a few. So, yeah, I guess we could now move into Q&A. And for the people in the room, we have sellotape.
Washi tape?
Washi tape, which is Figma branded. So if anyone asks a question, they can have one of these. And the best question.
It's a Figma branded Bagu bag.
I don't know how we're measuring best question, but I guess
I think
we'll know when it happens.
that's on you, right?
Yeah, okay.
I mean, to kick off, and I guess as one of the Friends of Figma people, I'm not eligible for these. How do I handle stakeholders that say AI will handle all of our UX needs from now on?
Well, I mean, they can give it a go. I guess that's definitely something I've noticed is, people very quickly realizing it doesn't do everything and doesn't understand SEERs are often completely irrelevant or not applicable, or it's, and the other thing, I guess, I hope no one is like an AI expert's going to call me out on this, but AI is very good at stuff where there's a lot of content and there's a lot of knowledge about it. Well, we're trying to hopefully often trying to build something novel and trying to do something new, and differentiate ourselves, and maybe doesn't necessarily lend itself to, mining what is already out there. But yeah, so I guess, but I think it becomes very self-evident that it's not quite doing the job.
Yeah, 100% agree from findings at our end as well.
Mm-hmm.
We have a question in the audience. 1 second.
Which color tape?
Never mind. I just wondering,
Sorry.
so far, what's your favorite AI tool?
What was that?
What's your favorite AI tool?
Figma Make, obviously.
Anything else?
Yeah. No, I would honestly say Figma Make. I very much am loving it. I guess I came to design from a software background, and so when I first, without dating myself, when we came into early days for UX, there was a lot of prototyping was done JavaScript and literally writing code, which is horrible, and a lot of really difficult things. And you were kind of your ideas were limited by your own really bad coding skills. And I think the funny, and so that kind of fell away. And then I think along came tools like, oh my goodness, I can't think of it. Just in Mind is one of them. There's another one, Actua. We should know that so well. Yeah, totally. But yeah, Actua, and these tools that basically purported to be able to make really, really high fidelity, clickable. You can type things into forms, you can calculate things, you can run little databases and things, and those tools, you can make software basically exactly like we would ship it. At the cost of, that is all the design team is doing now, is trying to use these tools and to use them to produce things. They're not actually thinking about what is the best thing to do, or very little time has been spent on that. Most of the time is actually spent in trying to build a prototype. I think Figma Make has suddenly come along, and tools like many others like it, but Figma Make, the awesome thing about it is you still, as part of the design process, I'll be building things, and Emily and others on my team, we will be building things and then bringing them into our Figma Make prototypes to, bring them to life and actually make these, for example, forms or a flow, make it feel real, mimic what is it going to look like if, when these things come back, and if there's a small, simulate some small amount of latency and things come back, how does that feel? That stuff was impossible. You would understand that when your engineer had implemented it, and you'd be like, oh God, that's not working. Now we can see this stuff almost immediately and say, actually, I'm going to change it to this, and and simulate these things really early on. So for all those reasons, I really love it. But I can see how it's very easy to go into get sucked in and spend all your time in Figma Make and AI prototyping tools. So definitely cognizant of, I don't want to be trapped in there, because actually what I love doing is going and seeing people. But I think one of the cool things, and this has happened once this year, is I visited someone and made some Figma Make prototypes of a certain search experience, I think it was, and was able to test it with users I was seeing that afternoon on site. So I was kind of able to learn something in the morning and test it with people that afternoon. Really small and quite basic, but really like to validate, is this the sort of thing that will solve that problem, in this sort of context? Being able to do that on site with customers is really cool. So yeah, I like that. But I also use ChatGPT quite often as well. We talked about, it's all, oopsies. How does that mean for our stream? Okay. So I think as I mentioned, Notion connected to ChatGPT seems to be really cool. Because we're running enterprise ChatGPT, in theory, I think there's now a Figma thing. You can connect Figma to ChatGPT. Yeah, you can't if you're on enterprise ChatGPT, it seems. But I'm sure it will come soon. But that seems really cool as well. Being able to describe a user journey and then have it spit out a FigJam flow, for example, a user journey using a template in FigJam seems pretty cool. Haven't done it yet though.
Line. How do we balance ideas and actioning ideas between stuff that leadership pops in and stuff that users pop in?
That is definitely it's probably not exclusive to B2B, but again comes back to that challenge of often leadership is they're trying to grow the business, and so a lot of what they're doing is what are people going to buy more of, and where are our competitors having things purchased, and where are people saying, hey, we're not buying off you because it doesn't do feature X. So that's such a hard thing for the business to balance. Very rare that there's something that no user wants to use that a business actually wants to buy. It happens, but I think that's probably understanding where that idea has come from the leadership in the business, and trying to see if there's opportunities to go and can we go and understand a bit more about what it is they actually want solved by doing this, and is there actually a way to do this better than our competitors and to do it better than the legacy software that maybe they're referencing.
Another question from Lenka. What if I only have access to the managers and not the end users? And if so, what's your sample size usually?
So the gatekeeping thing, that's it'd be interesting to know the context of the industry, but I haven't experienced that where there's literally no way to talk to someone, and I think often it's probably about understand maybe the pilots or something. I'm trying to maybe astronauts. I don't. Maybe but it's a real problem, and where this gatekeeping happens, where the people they don't want you disrupting their staff, but and so I think trying to there is sometimes subtle ways of explaining why it's very important to test something with the people who are going to be using it, and so bringing in things like user testing, that kind of stuff can be very helpful. It's a really awkward one, trying to tell people I don't want to actually talk to you, I want to talk to your staff, because the manager's probably really passionate about and really excited about it and wanting to work on it as well. So that's a super hard one to navigate. I haven't run into that myself, but I've definitely run into the situation where you first talk to the manager and then talk about how it'd be great to talk to someone who's doing this role, actually, because you do this role. I want to talk to someone who's on front desk. Can I talk to a receptionist to get them to look at this thing or to ask them a couple questions?
I mean, in previous roles, I found it a lot easier once you've built up trust with said managers.
Exactly. Yeah. That and that's can sometimes come from a place of not wanting to upset the apple cart of I don't want Will going in and talking about all the stuff that we are never going to buy or we're never going to build and we're never going to get, and that can be a little bit of that too.
I'd add that as long as you add the narrative of we're not here to sell anything, there's no right or wrong answers.
Definitely.
We're just here to be a fly on the wall.
Definitely.
Yeah. We've got a question from Janice who asks, when it comes to stakeholder buy-in, which department did you find to be the most helpful for support and decision making usually, and why?
Well, I mean, probably it's come from my experience, but generally working really, really closely with the product management team, and they, so I would probably say them and their leadership team are really usually quite passionate about this stuff as well, or want to be. So I would say them, but also engineers and engineering leadership, they love not building things that worthless and that no one's going to use that. It's kind of the opposite of what they want to be. They want to be working on stuff that no one's interested in. They want to be working on cool stuff that solves real problems. So actually, another kind of avenue is engineers wanting to, and kind of, it could be grassroots talking to engineers. We should bring up in the retro that we be nice to actually talk to real users and understand stuff. Real good. Oh, cool.
We've got a question from Adita who asks, when you're on your site visit, what's the best way to naturally get the user to tell you about their user journey, their pain points, without feeling robotic or?
Yeah, well, it's like I guess the technique is generally called like being a fly on the wall. So you're trying to just. A good example is maybe sitting in a finance department as they process a whole lot of bills, and you're just, and again, you kind of got to, usually there'll be someone who is facilitating your access to the site, someone who you've in contact with, and explaining to them what you're trying to do. Don't just show up and just start standing around awkwardly in the corner of the office. Explain, this is why, and we're not trying, actually, a good way to frame it is I'm trying not to interrupt people and stop them from working by talking to them, but we're there, and what I find often happens is they'll be like, okay, well, this is the thing I really, we need this? Oh, right, yeah. They are naturally doing the work, and they go, you know what, this is frustrating me. Well, why does it work like this? And I'll go, interesting, and try to understand a bit more. But they usually try to actually involve you in what's going on because you're there. But yeah, actually, if more than anything, the most useful thing is just being able to sit with someone as they do something and making sure you're telling them, setting the expectation that I don't want to go there and just talk to people and interrupt what they're doing. I want to sort of go there and sit while they're doing something. Obviously, not always possible. Like I will say, I've gone and sat in like operating rooms as surgery has been done, and that's a pretty extreme example, but it's not always something that is possible in those kind of situations. But in a lot of situations, particularly in offices or that kind of thing, law firms, they're very open to you coming and sitting with them. You're privy to all sorts of very confidential stuff. There's like recording things is completely off the limits, making it very we obviously have NDAs with our customers and things, but making people not feeling like they need to be guarded with private information because you're not. You're actively not got your phone out trying to take photos of things. That's a good way for them not feel comfortable with you being there, particularly in certain where information security is really paramount. But yeah, that's I think the coolest thing is sitting with someone as they do a process. So if there's a process that's happening that you're building software around, trying to actually say, can I go there when you do that? Or when that team does that thing, can I just go and sit in that department at a desk and work there? I know another time I just said, can I just work from your office for the day? Yeah. And sitting there and and this is a great one, was he had someone walking around saying, okay, who just created this task? And they walk around the office asking that. And I was like, oh, interesting. She has no idea who had assigned to this. This is actually pre-COVID, so it was a really good time for us to learn this. Is actually, it wasn't obvious where tasks were coming from in some cases, so we went and changed that. And it was because this person would go door to door around trying to work out who had just assigned her a whole lot of work that this office person had to think I would spend the next hour doing. So that's the kind of stuff that you don't expect. You're not going there to necessarily knowing that there's a problem with task management in that regard. You're just finding it by being there and being present. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, I can't really give it to the computer, can I? They can come and collect the sellotape and...
I have a question once again about stakeholders. So oftentimes, in my own experience as well, sometimes stakeholders have in their head that exact feature or something that they really want to see in the product.
Yep.
And they're really adamant about it. They really want to see that happening. But sometimes the user research shows a different direction, or maybe perhaps something less fancy than what stakeholders want.
Okay.
So in those situations, how do you manage that stakeholder pressure and the buy-in, and they always telling you, okay, we need this, I really like that feature. How do you balance that with your own research that's coming up, especially as you go along the journey? And sometimes, let's say you've come up halfway down the product line and you built some features already, and then stakeholders might come in and say, okay, I really like this direction, and they really like to go in a different direction now. So how do you manage that sort of situation?
Well, it doesn't help if it's easy to say, like, when you're halfway through that we should have done something different to start. But I think when a new project starts, I think a very key thing is it's another exercise. It's actually in that IBM enterprise design thinking. But a key first thing is stakeholder mapping. Who are the people who are really passionate about this thing, or are going to have an influence over it and going to be involved, and understanding who those people are so they can be involved and they can get those ideas out of their head onto paper early on, and co-design type things is really good for that kind of stuff. So I think that's a key thing. Just on that, is identifying stakeholders early on so they don't come in and torpedo things halfway through. But yeah, definitely. I mean, it's interesting the case you mentioned. They wanted something that's maybe more fancy than maybe the research suggests is necessary. Well, I'm sure that probably has a higher effort to implement as well. So maybe engineers would be able to help in that regard, but actually, the one that the users want is actually going to be quicker to get to market as well. So it'd be very weird for us to do this other one that apparently no one wants, and it's also going to cost more. It's usually the opposite. We're trying to convince people to do something which costs more, but it's a really good idea because of the research. So it's almost it's a slightly easier problem, because you'd get your engineers, for example, to help convince why maybe the other approach is better. But I think sometimes being able to just and I've done this, is you try to actually get two concepts going at once. It's maybe a bit more possible now with Figma Make, for example. But we can actually have multiple variations going at the same time, and being able to evaluate those things. I think that's, people just want to be heard, and if they've got a great idea and they're really passionate about it, it's really upsetting that everyone's moved on without me being able to get this thing. So sometimes just being able to articulate it and subtly, a good thing, an idea as well was bring in, look at, and this, based on your idea, this is what we've designed. And they're cool. Maybe it's actually nothing like what they had in mind, but you've been able to sort of wrangle it towards more, taking in some cues to what they've said about, or talking about how, this does that same problem we've talked about, and maybe in this other way. So subtly, moving it in another direction as well. But yeah, those are all things that I've done before, certainly. But I definitely know the problem. And sometimes if they're like the CEO, well then you're just building their thing. Yeah. Hey.
Hi. Actually, I was.
No.
I'm working for a small company, and A/B testing is at. We do few A/B testing at final stage.
Yeah.
So because I saw you share some A/B testing at SLAD, and do you do the A/B testing during the research stage?
Yeah, so we just don't do it. And I guess that was more it's not something we can really do, because people need to have consistency, and when we can't just change things for certain people, because the first thing they will do is they'll go to their IT department and say, this is different, I don't know how to do this anymore, where's the generate button gone, or whatever, this icon's different, or this color is, the shade of this color has changed. Would you believe people complain about that? But the color has changed, and so we have to be kind of quite careful about disrupting people and upsetting ultimately that customer. We save them for being upset for an outage or something. We don't want to manufacture our own kind of causes. So yeah, we don't generally do it. But in cases, and so if I come back to your question, was like when should it be done?
No, I mean because I'm not sure. Do you do the A/B testing at the research stage?
Oh yeah. So we tend to do. There is another technique, I mentioned it, or maybe I didn't actually, but early on, I talked about surveys. So there's a type of survey type thing you can do called preference testing, which is maybe you have two really strong ideas, and you can ask enough people that if enough people are really strongly think one idea, you could be quite confident to move forward with that one. So that's another way, is sort of a preference test by way of a survey, sending that to a lot of people. That can be done really early on. The A/B testing, generally, we've had to have built and actually implemented something to be able to test it, and hopefully in a small, lightweight way that you're then going to harden if it's working well. But often, when I've done that kind of stuff, actually it's all ready to go. That update to the website, we just want to be sure that we're not causing any problems and it's performing better than the other way, and then we're just going to cut everyone across to it. So it's actually happening right at the final end stage. I guess what you're talking, I think maybe a technique here you could look into would be preference testing. You could do that with any survey tool, with here's option A, here's option B. Why did you like? Or which one, did you prefer? Randomize it so not everyone's seeing it in the same order. There's certain things you can do. I can't say I've done that a lot, but I've certainly done it before. And against all of that, it comes into statistical significance. If you ask 5 people and 3 of them liked that way, it doesn't really help, because you might ask another 5 people and they all might like the other way. So asking a lot of people, you need 100 or hundreds of people, depending on, I'm not going to get into stats because I hate that, but also, I'm definitely not qualified to talk about that, but, getting into calculating how many people you need to talk to is a thing. Actually, probably ChatGPT could help now, so just do that. Yes, Emily.
So, as a product designer working in a legal tech, so it's really hard to get hold of lawyers' time. So
Yes.
obviously, we have very limited amount of minutes.
Yep.
And when our interviewees are sidetracking and want to share something other than the topic we want to taste, how do you bring the focus back on?
Yeah, that's again comes back to the awkward slide of it can be awkward to try to do that, and if they really want to tell a story, it's quite awkward to stop it. I think being really for us, for us in legal tech, it's very hard to, when I get a lawyer's time, I'm happy with them to talk about anything, because it's really hard to, often we're talking to other folks, who are working with the lawyers, because they tend to be the people who are really power users of the software we're talking to most of the time. And so, I do think there are subtle things that I find myself doing just to try to interrupt, to be like, oh, okay, and then trying to course correct to bring it back to the thing I really want to know. But coming back to, I guess, that's the Steve Portugal quote, was actually, if they're telling a story, it's going to be very unlikely that it's irrelevant. That's what I mentioned. Like, if they're passionate enough to tell us about something, it's probably really worth hearing where it's going. It'd be very, maybe if it's completely irrelevant to software, but then maybe the whole interview's a write-off and just enjoy it. Maybe they want to talk about something completely, farming or something. I don't know. Then that's okay.
I might wrap up with a tough one for you.
Cool.
In B2B land, especially with your mega corporate customers, a lot of the decisions are deal-driven with not a lot of wiggle room.
Yep.
How do I best contribute to deal-driven feature development as a designer when a lot of things are already decided?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So as it does come back to like a culture of, if you're selling features that haven't been built yet, you're kind of constrained to developing that feature as sold. So hopefully it's been, the thing we're selling is the capability to do something, maybe not necessarily exactly how the feature works and how it feels and those kind of things. So hopefully it would be more wiggle room. But if we've really spout out exactly, what this feature is, I would say it's been able to, it might be really hard to do anything too drastic within that scope, because you've been really narrowly defined and contractually locked into delivering that. What can you do? It's more about finding other avenues to get ahead of that stuff, and so do a certain amount of vision and exploratory work is happening alongside that work. So okay, so maybe a lot of what we're doing day to day is the the stuff that we've already sold, and that's not a great way to. Yeah, it's very common, but it has a lot of problems if we're selling things before before we've even designed them. That has challenges, but what if we can't build it? It can happen, but I think doing that alongside vision and exploratory work, where we try to actually get ahead of exceed what our customers want. It's kind of we're trapped ourselves into building whatever it is they can imagine, and they're not probably not. There might be designers if you're designing Figma, but they're not designers or engineers, and they don't understand the capabilities of what we could do and all the cool stuff we could do, and that's not their job. Their job is to run a law firm or whatever it is. So it's, again, if we're wanting to exceed expectations and delight users, that's a really bad way to run your business. But the reality you're describing is so it is really common, and I've definitely worked in that situation as well. I think it's just finding opportunities to also be looking at, that whole demand side versus supply side thinking, and looking at the other side of actually let's try to work out what people really want, and making that something and convincing our business stakeholders that's something we should prioritize after we've finished the deal-driven stuff, and that moves the culture around. Well, we can't do both all the time, so maybe, and if this stuff's really much cooler and it's what people want, then maybe that will get more airtime. But it is really hard. Honestly, at the end of the day, if we have sold something, we're going to deliver this, and we are almost contractually obliged to deliver it, there isn't a huge amount you can do other than just make the most of that. And hopefully it becomes less and less of a thing, but it definitely is a reality, and a lot of the time it does happen. So sorry, not a huge amount I can say to help there.
It's like a rite of passage for every designer.
Oh, someone gets
we got one more.
Oh.
One last.
Oh, thank you. So hi, William. So I'm thinking about, do you have encountered this kind of situation that a client really wants some feature urgently?
Yep.
But it involves a lot of engineering work, especially you have to deal with a lot of back-end work. Yeah, so that means you have to balance those two situations. And what steps do you normally take? Do you ship a minimum viable product, or any other action that you take?
So that's a very back-end heavy feature. There's a lot of work involved.
Because the client, they just think, okay, it's just a new table, or but actually it relates to a lot of database or something, API stuff. So
Well, I think definitely thinking in terms of feature slices or slices of value that maybe can help us to deliver a part of that without having to do everything, because the risk is you do all of that stuff and then ultimately what we build isn't quite what is right anyway, and so there's a huge amount of risk if we have to do a whole lot of stuff before we can actually ship something. And so what can we do early on to validate that that is a worthwhile thing, or we are on the right track if we were to actually spend this time. So it might be no way to get around it. We've got to do 6 months of back-end engineering work to fix a whole lot of technical debt or whatever it is. But if that has to be done, and then we figure out, can we actually fix it? Can we solve the problem? And what if you can't? What if and that was ultimately for nothing? That's a huge risk for the organization. So what can we do at the start? What is the smallest amount of thing we can do as a prototype, or as a slice of value that we could get? And particularly, I always think, until people are using something in anger, actually using it in their everyday work to try to do something, even if it's not scalable, it's not something we know we can build, at least we can get it into the hands of people in their everyday work. Then we can validate, is this actually a worthwhile thing? Yeah, we should confidently go ahead and just do all this technical work to be able to ultimately deliver it to everyone. But I think until that's ascertained, there's a huge amount of risk. So that's probably where as designers we can help. It's what is the smallest thing that would kind of help? And hopefully it's a nice thin slice across the back end and the front end, and might be something that's deliverable in a couple of sprints, but also might not be. There might be no way to get around it.
It sounds like there's a Figma tool that could help with that.
Oh,
no, starts with make.
Oh, sure. yeah, that 100%. I think that's increasingly, being able to, mock up backends or even like connect to things in ways that is never going to be scalable. It's not something we could ever ship to all of our customers, but maybe it's enough to get to a few people and for them to use it. So those are really worthwhile things to do at the start. Or maybe it's not even, that's kind of your data driven prototype, or it's a live data prototype, I think it's Marty Kagan calls it. That's where, it actually is engineering work, but it's connecting to things, but in a real way that engineers probably hate. Because it's not scalable and it's not performant or whatnot. But if we're only talking to 5 customers and we're getting to them, maybe it's okay to then help us be really clear that this is the thing we want to build and harden and do properly. It's definitely, I think that's is such a trend, is that we're going to have more and more ability to mock up things that go the whole, go from front end to back end, and it could be maybe ninjaed into real live systems for people to use. I think that's going to become more and more something that's possible in the future, much to maybe some people's I'm not going to be pleased with that, but I think we're going to see more and more of that, and they may even be things that are connected to real APIs and that kind of stuff. Did I give you tape? I can't remember. Oh yeah.
We need to give away the Figma branded bag.
What was the criteria?
Best question.
Oh no, that's not right.
Favorite?
Yeah, or favorite.
I enjoyed them all equally, so you can all share it, I think. I think your question was really good. Yeah. But I could have easily given it to anyone, so please don't be disheartened. Yeah.
But thank you everyone for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we are friends of Figma Auckland. I'll quickly jump to a couple QR codes where you can